Aloha and welcome to Ninth Island RC. Before I get started on today's video, I want to apologize to the viewers. I know I have not uploaded anything in the past several months, and I am very sorry about that. I really feel bad about it. Part of it is because my job, being as sporadic and constantly changing schedule as it is, that can cause a problem. But also because my desktop computer was acting sporadic, having problems, and then the motherboard died. So I am working on rebuilding a new computer out of a lot of the parts from the previous desktop. Obviously I need a new motherboard, which I did finally get. I'm still working on getting everything put together, just because, again, my job schedule causes problems. But today, got a special unboxing for you, and as you can tell, I'm actually in my garage, not at the RC workstation, partially because I don't have any operational cameras, and partially because the box is so freaking big. And a bit heavy. Okay. A lot of you, or some of you may know Kraken RC, and they've got a number of 1/5 scale vehicles, especially the Vesla. And for those of you who don't know what the Vesla is, essentially it's Kraken's take on the HPI Baja 5B buggy. Although, as a lot of people know, the HPI 5B had a lot of problems. Kraken, and their founder, Rob Wee, sorry about that. Basically, from what I can tell, he took everything that was good about the 5B and then improved on everything else. And up until now, they've only offered RTR, sorry about that. They've only offered RTR versions in both gas and electric. However, last year they announced that a limited number of kits called the SBK, similar to HPI's SBK, self-builder kit. And initially, the first run, they only offered 20 of each, 20 electric, 20 gas. So I've got one of the electrics. And we are going to unbox it. And then after the unboxing, also going to cover some upgrades. So, in the meantime, let's get cracking with the Kraken. Alright, let's see what we got in here. Okay, I'm going to move the box off to the side just because it is so freaking big. So, first thing I find on top is plastic. No, seriously. So we've got the primary body panel, which is nicely done as one piece, and this Lexan is really thick. I mean, this is probably about 3, maybe 4 millimeters thick, maybe 5, I'm not entirely sure. A little bit thinner on the sides, looks about 3 to 4, so that's the primary body panel. And then there is the roof panel. So I'm just going to move these off to the side for right now. Next we have bags. So first bag I pulled out is bag C, and these are the shocks. And they are quite big. I mean, that is the height of the shock bodies, and they are about 1.5 inches diameter. Springs are equally huge. if you ever run the like the Traxxas Max X Max, that's a 1/5 scale vehicle, so that'll give you an idea of the size of the shocks. Next up, we got bag G, which is lower suspension arms, and looks like the so this is probably the front because I can see the steering knuckles. And then bag F, that looks to be the looks like the possibly the battery tray. I'm not 100% sure. And then also the transmission spur gear cover, which is clear. And then we go to bag J, which I think may be the receiver box. Yeah, looks like the receiver box and also the servo mount, which is built into the receiver box. Now, what you can do for those that are interested, I believe the receiver and servo is the same that what's used in the Vecta, and you can cut off the servo mounts, which are incredibly strong, so you may not need to, but there is an aftermarket aluminum one that you can buy that the holes are already on the chassis plate, from what I understand. And we get to bag B, which is definitely the rear suspension arms, so that tells me that G is definitely the front. And yeah, rear uprights, pins, the balls for the shocks. These things are huge. They are easily a 1/2 inch in diameter. I mean, that's just massive. Unmarked bottle, but that's your fluids. They include 150 and 250 CST shock oil, and for the diff, 500K diff fluid. And we got a bunch of other small little ones. Bag D, which looks to be everyone's favorite bag, D-bag. Seriously though, these are the pins probably for the rear suspension. Bag K looks just to be the steering link. Bag N, okay, bag N is going to be for the wheels and tires. These are the beadlock rings, and if you can see how big in diameter those beadlock rings are. So that gives you an idea of the tires and what you're going to be dealing with on that. We got bag I, which looks to be like the, not sure if these are the rear or the front upper suspension arms. And it looks like a skid of some sort, probably based on I, probably the rear. And we got bag E, which is parts of the transmission. This is the motor mount plate. You got the spur gear in here. I will not be using that spur gear, which I will get to in the upgrade section of the video. We got bag H, which is the front bulkhead, the front lower suspension pins, and of course the front shock tower, which is also fairly sizable. And moving on to bag A. You gotta start somewheres, and that is the majority of the transmission. Now the stock transmission does include plastic housing, which again is very strong, but you're really gonna want to upgrade to the aluminum. A lot of people have discovered that, that even though this is incredibly firm, it's probably got a good high carbon count. There's still been problems, and especially if you're running the gas version. But if you are running the electric version, then it's still advisable to upgrade. So next we've got, this is what looks like the rear portion. Maybe the front portion of the cage. And yes, because here is the rear portion, the front portion will bolt together. So that is, in essence, the cage. And to me, this actually looks like it might be a little bit larger than the X-Max. So let me get these two pieces out of the way for now. Just so we can get back to more of what's in the bag. And bag M, this looks to be like the front skid plate, and then all of the bolts and everything for mounting the front. Not really sure entirely because haven't gotten the instructions yet. This is an unmarked bag, which looks to be like a tool of some sort, but it's got a cross section. This end is definitely 24mm hex. This end, I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not sure how that tool goes. So, another unmarked bag. Looks to possibly be some spare nuts and bolts. Not really sure. Nope. And another piece of the cage. So, from what I can tell, this piece actually looks like it's the rear. So this bolts up from underneath. So that makes it even bigger. So yeah, this is definitely larger than an X-Max. I mean, both are technically 1/5 vehicles, but yeah. And then finally we've got the wheels and tires. The wheels, the tires are, I wouldn't say pre-mounted, but they are already pushed onto, and looks like the tires do include the foam inserts already. Somebody had told me that the vehicle didn't include, but they definitely do. Obviously the beadlock rings are not pre-mounted. That was in bag N. Then we finally get to the chassis plate, which I'm going to take it out of here so that everyone can get a good look at it. Now this is only 60/61. It is not 70/75. There is an aftermarket one, 70/75, made by Taylor RC. And from what I understand, it's very thick. But I'm going to give the 60/61 a shot, see how it works. I'm not sure which end is, okay, actually. So this is definitely the front end, this is the rear, because obviously the transmission housing with the differential will sit there. And what I was talking about earlier with the battery box, so it will mount using these holes, but you do see that there are 4 more holes. That is where the aftermarket servo mount can be installed if you want to go that route, which, I probably will in the long run, but to start, not going to. Stickers, everyone loves stickers. How's that for a sticker? That is the biggest friggin' sticker I've ever received in any RC kits. Not sure what I'm going to do with it. Obviously, it's way too big for the vehicle, but, I may find a way to put it someplace. Then, of course, you get your printed manual, and there are some revisions already included. Some of us, in looking at the online downloadable version, which they made available to those of us who pre-ordered it, some of us found some errors. And so, since they obviously can't, redo the printed manual yet to include those errors, they've done some revision which they include extra sheets. And then, of course, hopefully, I have not checked yet, but the downloadable version should have those updates already in. And then this roll here, I'm going to assume is the decals or sticker, however you want to label it. Having grown up doing plastic models, I still call them decals. But these are for the Lexan body, which I won't be using. Matter of fact, I won't be using the cage either, because got something a little special that I'm going to reveal to you guys before I get to the upgrades. But, there you have it. That is the unboxing. I've worked on my X-Max before, huge vehicle, but as I said, this definitely appears to be a larger vehicle. I wish I could get to my X-Max right now, and just so you could compare even just the tires or the chassis in length, whatever. I think I'm not gonna do a build video, but I will do a final build thought video, and hopefully by that time I can actually pull out the X-Max and then physically show you the size comparison between the Vesla and the X-Max. So, as I said, there we have it. There's the unboxing. So, let's get to the upgrades. But before the upgrades, got a little addition for why I'm not using the cage or the body. I'm not going to be building the Vesla exactly as it's supposed to be the Vesla, because I also picked up the SX5 Sidewinder sandrail kit. Box is not as big as the Vesla box itself, but it's not exactly a small box. I mean, you see my sledge, what I call the Sledge-O-Matic. So, yep, the SX5 Sidewinder sandrail will be part of my Vesla build. And I've got something very special planned for the body. But for that, you'll have to wait until it's actually built. And for those of you who aren't really sure about the difference between the Vesla cage and body and the SX5 Sidewinder cage and body, so here's a couple of images of the Vesla. Here we've got a nice little side view, and you can see kind of how tall and, from the angled front view, you can see it's kind of boxy, not really, but, just slightly kind of boxy. And then here you look at the SX5 Sidewinder, and from the side view, it's definitely not as boxy. It actually kind of has a look reminiscent of the old VW Beetle dune buggy conversions. And here from this angled front view, you can see it looks even more so like that. It's kind of really cool looking. It's got at least it appears to have a slightly lower profile, which will help bring the weight down just a little bit, center of gravity. But I definitely prefer the Sidewinder cage and body over the stock Vesla. Okay, so as I've mentioned sometimes in the past, I typically classify upgrade parts in three primary categories. You have parts that are designed to improve performance, you have parts that are designed to improve handling, and you have parts that are basically just aesthetics, things that are just designed to make something look better. And even within each of those three categories, I typically divide parts into those that would be considered absolutely necessary, and those that would be nice to have but are not necessarily necessary. And then way down the line are just parts that people sometimes want to add, just because it's not an absolute necessity. It's not something that's nice to have, but not a necessity. It's even less necessary than that. So the majority of these parts, I'm building an electric version, so these are all going to apply to the electric, but a majority of them are also applicable to the gas version. For example, we're going to start with, the machined aluminum transmission housing. And if you're running a smaller gas engine, you can definitely use this. If you're going to be using a larger or a big bore engine, you're going to want to avoid this one and instead move up to their just recently released big bore transmission housing. The key to that is that the idler gear, which you can see here, the idler gear in the big bore transmission is much larger. And it's not this large, but it's kind of somewhere in between this and this. It's a totally redesigned transmission housing that positions the idler gear, instead of being down here, it actually positions it up higher. You can use that transmission housing for electric, but from what I've been told, and I've had conversations with a number of people, including Rob Wee, who's the founder of Kraken, that even he believes it's basically overkill if you're going to be running electric. But if you are running electric, then you definitely want the machined transmission housing, and you're probably also going to want to get the machined motor mount plate, which when mounted basically looks kind of like that. Now, these would be considered necessities, whether you're running gas or electric. Another necessity would be the hardened steel transmission gears. And although in a few cases, especially with the gas, and even from what I understand, and could be wrong, but from what I understand, even some people who have run the Vesla on 12S, the idler gear has cracked, basically disintegrated, whatever. And so, yes, I did get the hardened steel transmission gear set, but Taylor RC just recently released their billet hardened steel machine. So, I'm still going to keep a hold of this. I'm not going to sell it. This will be a backup just in case something happens to the one from Taylor, but that's going to be the transmission. That is a necessity. Another necessity would be the hardened steel gears for the differential. This includes the gears. It also includes shims. That is definitely a necessity. Something that is not a necessity, this one I kind of put somewhere in between a necessity and nice to have, but not necessity. Taylor RC came out with titanium cross pins for the differential. Now you can upgrade to hardened steel ones. I decided to go with the titanium ones because they're stronger and at the same time lighter than the steel ones. So to me, this is a necessity, but others might consider it a nice to have, but not necessity. Another one that I would consider a necessity is the hardened steel spur gear. Same 57 tooth as the stock spur gear, and the thing is just massive. It's also quite heavy. But the hardened steel one, I would definitely consider that a necessity. Steering, a lot of people, slop in steering. I don't know how it is in the Vesla. I know in some vehicles, when you think of a TT02, that thing just has a massive amount of slop, and it takes a lot of work to get rid of. So what I did was I opted for, Taylor RC has the machined aluminum, I believe it's 7075. It's not 6061. It is 7075. But the bell crank for the steering, definitely necessity. Something that, again, I would place kind of, it's not quite a necessity, but it's better than a nice to have. And that would be Taylor RC's titanium steering posts. Again, stronger than steel, but lighter. The whole idea is, obviously you want to have your center of gravity lower. So this should help with that very minorly, but I just got it because I figured it's stronger, and that's going to be better. I'll hold that one for a second. And then the last upgrade is the bearings. Now, I don't want to say that the bearings included are not good. I mean, a lot of RCs, Chinese RCs use very low quality bearings. From what I understand, the bearings that are in the Vesla kit are actually quite good. So I'm going to hold on to those again, just like with the idler gear. Those will be a backup, but my preference has been, going back to racing, I used to do off-road racing, Avid RC is my go-to for all bearings. So I've got all the bearings here for the vehicle. Something else I did for the steering. Now it uses flanged bushings, and again, just prefer bearings, and so I got some flanged bearings. I don't know if these are actually going to fit. The ID and the OD is correct. The thickness, since I haven't actually even opened the box prior to doing the unboxing, I didn't know. And since I haven't actually gone through piece by piece, I still don't know. So I have these, if they're not usable, it's not much wasted. I mean, they were $1 each, so $4, not a big deal. But I figured it would be a good idea to have them. Now, I still haven't ordered the electronics. That, of course, will be the Hobbywing Max 5 and the 800 kV motor, which I will get from Kraken. I'll have them solder on the QS8 connectors. But for steering duties, a lot of people go with really expensive servos. I mean, some of the 5th scale servos that have enough power, they typically cost anywhere from $225 to $300, and some even up to $350. I've heard a lot of good things about the Hobbywing 701MG. It has a machined aluminum case. The top is plastic, but the main part of the case is machined aluminum. I believe it's around 900 kilogram, per inch. Or, sorry, I just blanked on the specs, but actually, sorry, they're right here. So at 7.4, and this does go up to 8.6 or whatever it is, but at 7.4, which would be a standard, it's 950 ounce-inches of torque, and 0.14 second. It's slow when you think about a racing servo, but when you're dealing with a 5th scale vehicle, you don't need fast. Slow, a little bit slower is going to be much better. Nice thing about the 701 MG is that in addition to the usual plastic parts that comes with pretty much all servos, it does include an aluminum servo horn. So that's going to be a nice advantage, not having to order one separately. So there you have it. These are the upgrades that I'm going to install, at least for now. This is what I'm calling phase 1. Phase 2 is probably going to include the machined aluminum uprights front and rear. Do not plan to install the aluminum lower suspension arms. I feel that's extreme overkill, adds a lot of weight, and for how I probably intend to use the vehicle, it's not a necessity. So, there you have it. There is the unboxing, as well as the upgrade parts that I'll be using for phase 1. I'm not going to do a build video. I mean, the size of this thing is massive. That obviously, I'm not even sure I'm going to have enough room to build it here on my workstation. So that'll probably get built in the garage. Once the build is complete, then I will probably do a video final thoughts of what I thought of the build process and how everything fit together. But for now, mahalo, and until next time.